Welcome back to your daily dose of ancient wisdom. We continue our reading of Srimad Bhagavata, Book 1, Discourse 4. A scene of frustration overtakes Vedavyasa. Vedavyasa says, when Suta spoke thus, Saunaka, who was a student of Rigveda and the head of a large seminary, was the oldest of the sages assembled for that long sacrificial session, applauded him and said, Saunaka said, Suta, you are highly blessed and foremost of expositors. Pray repeat to us the same sacred story of the Lord as the divine sage Sukha recited to Parikshit. In which particular yuga was the discourse held, and at what place, and at what was the occasion for it, and at whose instance did the sage Krishna Vedavyas compose this Samhita? Large collection of poems is called Samhita. His son Sukadeva is a great yogi, viewing all alike, in whose eye diversity has ceased to exist, whose mind is exclusively set upon God, and who has awoke from the sleep of the worldliness. He remains incognito and is therefore taken for as a stupid fellow. On perceiving the sage Vyasa following his son, who was retiring to the forest as a recluse, the ladies who happened to be bathing in a pond on the roadside covered themselves out of modesty, even though the sage had clothes on. While they took no notice of his son, who was stark naked and walked past them just a while ago. Noticing this strange behavior on their part, the sage asked them to the account for it. Thereupon the ladies told him that he was still alive to the difference of sex, but not so to his son, whose vision was faultless, whose perceived no difference at all. How did the citizens of Hastinapura come to recognize him when he visited the Kuru Jnana country and went about the city like one mad, dumb, and dull? And how did the royal sage Parikshit, a scion of Pandu, come to have a talk with that sage, in the course of which the latter recited the Bhagavata Purana? That highly blessed sage Sukadeva waits at the door of householders to sanctify their abode only for such time as one takes in milking a cow. They say King Parikshit, Abhimanyu's son, O Suta, was counted among the foremost devotees of the Lord. Kindly narrate to us the story of his most wonderful birth and doings. Why did that emperor, who served to enhance the glory of Pandavas, take his seat on the bank of Ganga with a vow to fast on to death, spurring his imperial fortune? Enemies bowed at his footstool, bringing to him riches of their own security. Is it really strange, dear Suta, how did the valiant prince, while he was so young, take it into his head to relinquish that fortune, which is so difficult to renounce, as well as his life? Men who are solely devoted to the Lord of excellent fame live not for their own sake, but only for promoting the welfare, the affluence, and prosperity of the world. Why then did he cast off his body, which was the support of other beings, in a spirit of aversion? Therefore, pray tell us all that we have asked you on this occasion, for we know you have mastered the entire range of sacred lore bearing of the course of the Vedas. Suta replied, In the Dwapara age, the third yuga of the present Chatur Yuga, the period of four yugas from Satya to Kali, the great yogi Vyasa, who is a part manifestation of Srihari, was born to Satyavati, who had sprung from the seed of Uparichara Vasu, through the sage Parasara. One day, after taking his bath in sacred water of Saraswati, he sat in a lonely place just at sunrise. The sage, who had an unfailing eye and could read the past as well as the future, saw how, by flux of time which passed unnoticed, there ensued in every age an overlapping of duties, as a result of which the potency of the material objects had diminished and people had grown irreverent, weak, dull-witted, and short-lived. Finding the people so unlucky, the sage began to investigate by means of his divine insight as to wherein lay the welfare of the men belonging to all grades of the society and stages of life. Perceiving that Vedic sacrifices, which are performed through the agency of four priests, namely Hota, the Advaryu, the Udghata, and Brahma, are the purifiers of men, he divided the one Veda into four for the continuance of sacrifice. Please note, the function of Hota is to invoke the gods by reciting the Rig Veda. That of Advaryu is to measure the sacrificial ground, to build the altar, to prepare the vessels, to fetch wood and water, to light the fire while repeating the Yajur Veda, and so on. And that of the Udghata is to chant the Samaveda, and that of a Brahma to supervise the sacrificial performance and set right the mistakes, if any. He thus separated the four Vedas under the names of Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, and the Itihasas and Puranas are called the fifth Veda. Of these, Paila received the Rig Veda. The seer Jaimini was the first who learned how to chant Samaveda, while Vaisampayana was the only one who mastered the Yajur Veda. The sage Samantu, son of Daruna, acquired proficiency in Atharva Veda, while Mai, which is Suta's father, Romaharshana, gained mastery over the Itihasas and Puranas. These later sages, Paila and others, divided their respective Veda into more than one branches. In this way, through their pupils, and pupil of these later, the four Vedas came to be divided into so many branches. The divine Vyasa, who is compassionate of men of poor wits, evidently did so in order that even the dull-witted might be able to retain the Vedas in parts. Seeing that the women, the Sudras, and the fallen Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas were debarred even from hearing the Vedas and did not know how to perform the acts that are conducive to the gods, sage Vedavyasa was good enough to compose the Mahabharata epic in order that women and others too might attain the blessedness through the same. Even though Vyasa ever remained wholeheartedly engaged in doing good to living creatures, his heart was not satisfied with it. O Brahmanas, Feeling uneasy at heart, the sage who knew the secret of dharma or the righteousness sat reflecting in a secluded spot of the holy bank of Saraswati and said to himself thus: observing the vow of celibacy, I have reverently studied the Vedas, served the elders, and worshipped the sacrificial fires, and honestly followed their precepts. I have also revealed the purport of Vedas through the Mahabharata, in which women, the Sudras, and others can find their respective duties and other things explained. Though I stand foremost among those who are preeminent in sacred knowledge and possess uncommon powers too, my soul, it seems, has not yet realized its true nature. It is because I have not yet fully expounded the virtues that enable one to attain the Lord. It is these virtues that are loved by God realized saints, and they alone are dear to Lord Vishnu himself. While the sage Krishnadvaipayana or Vyasa was thus sorrowing with the consciousness, then something was waiting in him. The sage Narada, called at his hermitage, already referred to. When sage Vedavyasa saw Narada come, he instantly rose to receive him and duly offered worship to the celestial sage, who was adorned even by the gods. Thus ends fourth discourse, forming part of story relating to Naimisha forest in Book 1 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as Paramahamsa Samhita. Thank you.